All right, welcome to episode 141 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. I'm your host, Nolan McGraw, and I am doing a solo show this week. First time in a while. First time since before, I think you got to go all the way back to late summer to find the last time I did a solo show, and they've been very, very few and far between throughout the entire length of this podcast. But moving forward, I guess this might be the norm. In order to keep this going, because we like doing this, I like doing this every week. Schedules don't always line up, so I figured, you know what, I'm going to keep this going. Going to do as many solo shows as possible in order to put out content, and as long as there's stuff to talk about, why not, right? So, I mean, this week, in terms of breaking news, maybe not the most, but the big topic this week that I wanted to get into is kind of a deep dive into the Ravens free agent class, players that could be on their way out in the 2021 offseason, unrestricted free agents, and maybe a look at some restricted free agents as well, who they should keep, who's an easy guy to let go, perhaps. Before we get into the Ravens, which is going to take up most of this episode, I want to talk about the Orioles, and we're going to get into here just something really brief. You know, pitchers and catchers reporting this week. Position players will be following next week. Orioles baseball is on the horizon. I can almost smell it. I can almost taste it. It's almost here. And one of the biggest talking points around the Baltimore Orioles right now is some of these free agent, over-the-hill, washed up, whatever term you want to use, pitchers that have been acquired. And we're about a few weeks late here on this Felix Hernandez story, but since they just added Matt Harvey as well, I figured I'd lump them together, give my thoughts. And I like it. I mean, I like Felix Hernandez more than the Matt Harvey signing, obviously. You look at the two of them. Felix Hernandez, the much more accomplished pitcher. Matt Harvey had an exceptional start to his career, and then everything just went off the rails, and he's been awful the past 3-4 years, and really has shown no signs that he's capable of being good long-term. But he's here on a minor league deal. No harm, no foul. The Orioles just taking a flyer on a veteran pitcher. But the Felix Hernandez one is what's more interesting to me. Not only because, as I said, he was once an elite pitcher, Cy Young Award winner, and he's a future Hall of Famer at that. But this is also intriguing because I think he might still have something left in the tank. And you might groan, you might roll your eyes and say, I'm expecting too much of a guy that's, well past the age of 30. His best years are behind him. His last 2 seasons in Seattle were not great at all. But this time last year, Felix Hernandez was reporting to spring training for the Atlanta Braves. They had taken a chance on him after he was done with Seattle. Thought he still had something to give. The Braves take a chance on him. He reports to spring training, and then we get the COVID stuff. Felix Hernandez opts out of the 2020 season, so we don't get to see him really at all. Might have pitched in 1 or 2 spring training games, and what's that going to show you, especially for a guy like him? At his age, 1 inning, 2 innings of work, maybe. Really didn't get any legitimate look at him in the year 2020. So you don't know what he would have done last year had there not been this COVID situation, had there been a full season, had he not opted out. What would his 2020 season have looked like in any capacity? Full season, short season, we just don't know. And you go back to 2019, which is his last year on the books, numbers aren't great again, but he did suffer a shoulder injury that prevented him from playing a full season. He only got about, I want to say, 15 to 18 starts, somewhere in there, where he's usually looking to hit 28 to 30. So the Orioles are throwing their hat in the ring, giving him a chance. He's certainly going to have an opportunity, and he's only going to make, what, $1 million if he makes the Major League club. Super cheap. And this is exactly what they did last year, but a lot more to be excited about with Felix Hernandez than any of these other guys that they've given minor league deals. Last year it was Tommy Milone and Wade LeBlanc. Wade LeBlanc is back again this year. He had a terrible 2020, but he's back again this year. Minor league deal again. Tommy Milone exceeded all expectations to the point where the Orioles actually got a return for him at the deadline. I know, still shocking that happened. So you don't know. And Tommy Milone was a journeyman throughout his career. He found his footing along the way. Certainly not a Wade LeBlanc. He saw more success in his career than that. But Felix Hernandez, once one of the top pitchers in baseball, if he's healthy, could be a part of your rotation, a number 4, a number 5 type of guy, a spot start type of guy, long relief in the bullpen at the very least. I think you're going to be seeing quite a bit of Felix Hernandez for the Orioles in 2021. Just a hunch. And the name recognition alone is great. This is what I've been talking about on the podcast for a long time. Ian Schultz agreed with me many times on this podcast. Felix Hernandez wasn't the name that we always brought up, but I know we both like this move. I'm just disappointed to see this week that our good friend Bartolo Colon will be not playing in Major League Baseball. He signed with some foreign league. I don't know where he's playing. He's not playing in Major League Baseball. I can tell you that. Nobody gave him a deal. I am still disappointed that the Orioles are not taking a chance on him. If you're going to give Matt Harvey an offer, if you're going to give Wade LeBlanc a minor league contract, let's bring Bartolo Colon in. Please get us some excitement. Get us something to, at the very least, if he's not good, something to laugh at. Give us the memes. That's the 2020 Orioles were fueled by memes. I don't want to hear anyone dispute that. I mean, halfway through the shortened season, 30 games in, they were in the playoff race, and then they fizzled out and they didn't make it. But there was genuine excitement amongst diehards last year that from playing a 60-game season and the Orioles were getting unexpected production out of guys that are pretty much no names to the rest of the league. That was funny. It was hilarious. It was a lot of fun to watch for us here in Baltimore. And with all the COVID stuff going on and all that, it was just a nice distraction, a nice, enjoyable, shortened season. I really enjoyed watching the Orioles in 2020. And one last thing here, I don't want to miss this, because I dug this up. Felix Hernandez, in his career at Camden Yards, in case you were curious, 9 career starts in Baltimore, 54.1 innings pitched, a 5-2 record, and an ERA of 3.79. Not too shabby. Let's move on to the Baltimore Ravens, and there is a lot to get into here. And the big overarching topic is free agency 2021. Who's coming back? Who's walking? Who's leaving? Who's getting a big payday elsewhere? And what sparked this topic was some news that I saw here about Dez Bryant. Now, Jeff Zrebiec covers the Ravens for The Athletic, does exceptional work. My go-to beat reporter. I know a lot of other people feel the same way. Always the guy that I go to first. If I'm hearing rumblings of breaking news, I'm going right to Jeff's Twitter. And he had an interesting write-up on The Athletic about the Ravens free agents this offseason, and he said, in his opinion, again, I don't know if this is rooted in conversations with sources or just a hunch, says that he expects Dez Bryant to not be with the Ravens in 2021, and the reason being the team wants to go in a younger direction. That's the reason he cited. Nothing surprising here. If the Ravens end up moving on from Dez Bryant, no one would be shocked. They gave him a chance with a practice squad signing last year. ends up getting up to NFL speed fast enough that he is playing games with the Ravens on Sundays. And while the numbers were not there, only scored 1 touchdown, 6 receptions on 11 targets for 47 yards, pretty much a non-factor from game to game. So again, would not be surprising if the Ravens do in fact move on, but I thought it was interesting that the reason he cited was they want to go younger. And I mean, I guess that makes sense. People typically think younger equals better. That's fine. I'm not going to necessarily dispute that, but I want to ask, what would the harm be in bringing back Dez Bryant? You know, his max contract in 2020 was somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million. And again, that was the max. I'm pretty sure he didn't even get that because it was loaded with incentives. And I doubt that 6 receptions for 47 yards and 1 touchdown is reaching those incentives. So he's well under $1 million, I think, in what the Ravens paid him last year. He certainly didn't do enough to get a pay increase. So I think you could bring him back on another 1-year deal, maybe with a full offseason, a non-COVID impacted offseason. What would the harm be in keeping him around? He's obviously not expensive. I don't think he's a detriment to the locker room by any means. His teammates clearly look up to him. The coaches love him. Harbaugh likes him. You know, you look further here at this Ravens wide receiver depth chart. Everyone right now is clamoring for that free agent addition. Allen Robinson, Corey Davis, bring someone in. Galladay, that's who the fan base wants. But Willie Snead, also a free agent. Chris Moore, also a free agent. Wide receiver depth chart is looking a little rough. You know, unless you're expecting Devin Duvernay and James Prochet to take a big jump, I don't know. I mean, things are looking rough. They could obviously draft someone again, but unless they draft someone early, is that really going to pan out or have an immediate positive return for you? You know, taking receivers in the 3rd round or later, Miles Boykin, Prochet, Duvernay, those guys have flashed nice qualities, but they're not sure things. They're not even close to being number ones. I don't know. I mean, the depth chart is looking a little suspect here. So, again, they could add someone in free agency. They could draft someone. What would be the harm in bringing back Dez Bryant? You're not going to bring back Dez Bryant and make him your number one. You bring him back to be the one of the guys deeper in the depth chart, to be a coach-type player. Help the guys around him. Help the young guys. You know, you bring back Dez Bryant, but add some other people or retain Willie Snead. I would welcome that. Elsewhere in free agency for the Ravens, I got some, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4 names that are of interest to me. And then I'm going to finish with the pass rush because that's the big deal. 4 names I've got my eye on. What are the Ravens going to do? Starts with Derek Wolfe. Now, this is Derek Wolfe I really was impressed with in 2020. I thought he was going to be a role player. I thought he was just going to be a solid guy, a solid veteran guy to put in there next to Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell and really fortify the defensive line, continue to be stout against the run. I like the signing. It was obviously cheap. 1 year, $3 million, I want to say. But in 2020, Derek Wolfe proved to be more than a role player. He proved to be a pretty damn good piece. And in the absence of Brandon Williams and Calais Campbell during injuries or COVID, Derek Wolfe shined playing alongside rookies and rotational pieces on that defensive line. He was the guy. Derek Wolfe was exceptional in that role. So he's not just a role player. He's not just seeing success because he's playing alongside 2 other great players. He's very good in his own right. And I would make it an effort to retain him this offseason. I would make it a serious effort because, again, Brandon Williams has caught a little bit of an injury bug the past couple years, missed a game here, a game there. Nothing terrible, but Calais Campbell also got nicked up a little bit last year. I think it would be nice to have that trio back together again, and Derek Wolfe has obviously proven that he can lead the way. He can be the leader on that defensive line without those other two. He's kind of my top priority in terms of guys I want to retain, unrestricted free agents. It's got to be Derek Wolfe. I really want the Ravens to pursue him. Next guy is Matt Skura. Big question mark here. Had a very good 2019 season before suffering an injury. Worked his ass off to come back from that injury in 2020, but was not the same guy. Looked like the guy that we saw before 2019. And unfortunately, it looks like that 2019 Matt Skura was an outlier. He was serviceable in 2020. Had some snap issues, lost, his starting center role to Pat McCary. But right now, I think with the way this interior offensive line looks, you're not over the moon about Matt Skura or Pat McCary. But at the end of the day, Pat McCary is on your roster right now. He's under contract. He's insanely cheap. I don't think Matt Skura is going to go get a huge payday somewhere, but, you pretty much get the same value from both of those guys. Matt Skura, Pat McCary, they both give you pretty much the same thing. Pretty easy decision. I want the Ravens to explore free agent centers, veteran centers. I'd like them to maybe draft a sure thing center. I would welcome that. So not a big deal to let Matt Skura walk. That seems like an easy decision to me. Anthony Levine is next. Standout special teams player, not playing as much defense these days. A little surprising, especially with all the secondary issues they had last year, that Wink was not so quick to throw Levine into the secondary. Kind of interesting, but that's the way it worked out. Still a tremendous special teams player, a tremendous leader on the team. Has been here since 2012 as a rookie. I'm not going to make a big fuss about him not being on the team, but I think for the price you could get him at, I could see him coming back on maybe a one-year deal. Not going to get anything more than that. Remember, he played 2020 on a one-year deal. So I'd give him something similar. Continue to be a good leader on special teams. Give him another chance to win another ring with the Ravens, because did not play much in 2012, but he is one of the last remaining guys on the roster from that Super Bowl season. Him, Justin Tucker, Sam Cook. I think that might be it at this point. Now that Marshall Yanda's gone, all these guys. I feel like I'm forgetting someone obvious. And Morgan Cox, he's gone. He was there. So I think they're the last three guys. Oh, and Pernell McPhee. But he's a free agent. We'll get into him in a second. Last guy here that I have my eye on, Gus Edwards. He is not unrestricted. He's restricted, so they're not in serious danger of losing him. They got to make him an offer and all that. But no doubt about it, the Ravens have gotten just amazing value out of Gus Edwards after coming in as an undrafted rookie in 2018, signed with the practice squad. Ravens bring him up midway through the season. They don't have anybody doing anything special at the running back position. Kenneth Dixon was still injured in the first half of the season or serving a suspension. I can't remember with Kenneth Dixon. I don't remember what his deal was. It was either injuries or suspension with him. Point is, he wasn't playing. I can tell you that. And the other guys just weren't producing. So Gus Edwards gets a chance. He seizes it, runs wild with it, no pun intended. And 2018, 19, and 2020, he's rushed for over 700 yards in every season. He's averaged so far in his career through 3 seasons, really 2.5, over 5 yards a carry. He has been exceptional as a change of pace back, and 2020 may have been his best season yet. I think so. 6 touchdowns after only scoring 2 in 2018 and 19. He scored 6 this past year, and he had career highs in rushing yards and receiving yards. So Gus Edwards, an essential player in this offense, and we know how important the run game is to this team, to the success of this offense. Mark Ingram is out of the picture. We saw that coming a mile away, but we all assumed that J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards will be the duo going forward. J.K. Dobbins clearly the number one guy, but Gus Edwards provides that great change of pace style that you want. Downhill runner, just goes straight ahead. J.K. Dobbins a little more shifty, maybe a little more patient. But Gus Edwards just very ground and pound, downhill runner, north and south, all of the cliches. That's who he is. I think he should be another big priority to make sure he is here in 2021 because he is very essential to the success of the run game and the entire offense. And above everything, all of that, he's proven that he's more than a flash in the pan. We've seen practice squad guys, we've seen, rejects from other teams come in here, have a good season, have a good stretch of games. But Gus Edwards, it's 3 years now. 18, 19, and 20, over 700 yards in each season. And if you give him starter reps in all 3 of those seasons, he easily goes over 1,000 yards every year. He's putting up over 700 yards rushing every year with backup number 2 carries. He's given you a lot. And the Ravens run the ball a lot. We know that. We all watch the games. You've all seen it. Gus Edwards is the real deal. Very exceptional running back. And the Ravens hopefully can hold on to him for a little bit longer to be the change of pace back behind behind J.K. Dobbins, who could be a dynamic, playmaking star in the making in this league. All right, those are some names I've got my eye on. But now let's get into the big topic that everyone is concerned about. I myself am very concerned about this pass rush situation. You got 3 big names that are all unrestricted free agents in 2021. Matt Judon, Yannick Ngakoue, and Tyus Bowser. Matt Judon played on the franchise tag last year, so he's up again. Ngakoue, he's at the end of his rookie deal, playing on his 3rd team in that time after being traded to the Ravens from the Vikings. And Tyus Bowser, who was drafted by the Ravens 4 years ago, had done absolutely nothing until 2020 when he had a pretty damn good season. But is that really who he is as a player? Or is he going to be like the Paul Krugers of the world, the Courtney Upshaws of the world? Is he going to be like Pernell McPhee the first time around? Or is he the real deal? So I know we've talked about this topic a lot on the podcast. I won't bore you with all the details. We all know what the situation is. But it's a tough situation, mainly because of how poorly Yannick Ngakoue played since being traded to the Ravens. If he came in and gave you anything decent, if he came in and looked like the guy we saw in Jacksonville, the guy we saw for a portion of the season in Minnesota, if he played like the Yannick Ngakoue we know, this would be a pretty easy decision for the Ravens. They'd have to shell out some money, but I think they would bring back Ngakoue in a heartbeat if he performed this season for them. But he didn't. Just 3 sacks. 2 of them came in that game against Jacksonville. He got close a lot, didn't get home. But for a guy like him, that's not good enough. And then also take into account his snap total. Yannick Ngakoue was not playing a lot of snaps down the stretch for the Ravens. They put him in on clear pass rushing downs. Other than that, they opted to go with some of their other guys. That's not a good look. the fact that he came in here and didn't perform at the level that we know he has consistently. That's the thing. Matt Judon, not consistent in his career. Tyus Bowser, farthest thing from consistent. One good year. Ngakoue, up until this point, very consistent. That's why everyone loved the trade at the time. He was as consistent of a young pass rusher as you can get in this league. No down years in Jacksonville. Off to a hot start in Minnesota. Comes to Baltimore. Nothing. I don't know what happened. I really don't. It's puzzling and it's frustrating because it puts the Ravens in a really tough spot. Do they really want to throw money at a guy who has the best track record of these three, but in his track record with the Baltimore Ravens, he's been terrible. Short track record, but he gave you nothing. And Martindale didn't feel comfortable putting him out there and giving him starting snaps. He was playing rotational piece snaps. Again, had he performed, I think the Ravens make him an offer. I think they do something similar to Marcus Peters. Try to get him locked up before the offseason even rolls around. And I'm not saying they would have gotten him on some big discount or hometown discount or anything because he's a Maryland, D.C. guy. I'm not saying that. But look at all these other big signings or big players that DaCosta has retained in the last calendar year. Pretty much all of them have signed for less than market value. Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, Ronnie Stanley. All of those guys got big contracts. Ravens had to shell out a lot of money for them, but they were not market-setting value. And you could make the case that all three of them deserved that. Marcus Peters, the playmaking ability he had, whether you think he's the best corner in the league or not, the fact that he was up as a free agent and coming off the year that he had, another all-pro season, I think he was certainly in line to get paid to be the top-paid corner in the league. That's just the way all the league values players. But the Ravens get him for a little bit under market value. Marlon Humphrey, same thing, not the highest-paid corner in the league, making less than Jalen Ramsey. Ronnie Stanley, making less than Laramie Tunsil. It's not a big discount, but it is a little bit. So why wouldn't you expect Yannick Ngakoue to get his big payday, but to be slightly under market setting value? But here's where things get really tough. Matt Judon, Ngakoue, Tyus Bowser, as I already said, you're not rushing to pay any of these guys. But if you let all three of them walk, what is your pass rush depth chart? Pass rush options, what do they look like? Pernell McPhee and Jihad Ward, who are also unrestricted free agents. I didn't lump them in with the other three guys because, again, they're either, in the case of McPhee, older and not playing starting snaps, or Jihad Ward, who is a rotational piece. But both of those guys are unrestricted free agents. Would certainly be cheaper to retain than Bowser, Judon, and Ngakoue. But their future is up in the air. But let's say they retain both of them. That leaves you with Pernell McPhee, Jihad Ward, Calais Campbell, and then you got Jalen Ferguson, who is pretty much a dictionary definition of a bust right now. Second-round pick a couple years ago and is struggling to get snaps. When I listen to this fan base start clamoring for a playmaking wide receiver or another sure thing offensive lineman to help bolster this line and protect Lamar, I hear you. I agree with you. I would welcome either of those additions. But, I've been on the draft a pass rusher train since last year's draft. One of my biggest takeaways from the 2020 draft was the fact that the Ravens completely neglected to draft an outside linebacker or edge rusher in any capacity. They did nothing. If you're in the fan base right now and you're saying, I don't want Matt Judon, I don't want Ngakoue, I don't want Tyus Bowser, they're not worth the money, I agree with you. But what is this pass rush going to look like next year? Because it wasn't great this year. What's it going to look like next year unless they draft one early? Because if you want a legit guy who's going to have a good chance to come in here and produce as a rookie, you're probably going to have to draft one in the first round. That's where you're going to get a sure thing. And is there even going to be a sure thing pass rusher at the position that the Ravens are picking in the first round? I'm not a mock draft guy. I'm not, a college football guy. I can't tell you. I'm just know that that's a big need. And I would go as far as to say, knowing the wide receiver situation, knowing the offensive line situation, I think pass rush is hands down the biggest hole on this team right now, simply because you're going to lose 3 guys guaranteed to free agency. I would be okay bringing Pernell McPhee and Jihad Ward back. I don't think they're going to garner anything insane in terms of money, but those are not starting guys. Pernell McPhee gave you, very underrated, by the way. Pernell McPhee, very underrated season in 2020. Not just the way he played in the Titans playoff game, the entire year. He was doing that all year. He didn't get enough credit for the season that he had, especially coming off the injury the year prior. Everyone was saying, he's too old. He's going to get gassed. He'll give you a good effort first half of the season, and then he'll be non-existent in the second half. But in 2020, in the year of COVID, with all this other, nonsense going on, Pernell McPhee looked like prime Pernell McPhee. But again, you bring those guys back, you still don't have anyone. Got to add somebody. And one of the names that is making some waves amongst the fan base, because he's a big name, is J.J. Watt. And this is what I want to close the episode on. J.J. Watt, surprise headlines this past week. He was granted a release from the Texans. Boy, it's hard to imagine him outside of Houston. After everything he did on and off the field in that city, I can't imagine J.J. Watt playing anywhere else, but looks like that's going to be the case next year. He's got a chance to add to a Hall of Fame resume. He's already a Hall of Famer. Now he's got a chance to go for a Super Bowl ring here in the last few years of his career. Let me start by saying this. I have tremendous respect for J.J. Watt, one of the best defensive players I've ever seen in my life. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 5-time All-Pro. He's a Hall of Famer right now. And I certainly recognize that the Ravens need a pass rusher. We just got done talking about that, how bleak the depth chart is looking. But the Ravens need a sure thing at pass rush. A real, reliable, sure thing. And J.J. Watt just isn't a sure thing at this point in his career. And I'm not talking about the low sack total in 2020. I'm talking about the injuries. It helps his case that he played a full 2020 season, but that was just the second time since 2016 that he's made it through an entire 16 games. He's one of the greatest of his generation, but if he didn't suffer those injuries, who knows how we would be talking about him when his career is done. Would he be amongst the Ray Lewises of league history? I like J.J. Watt. I like him a lot. I get why people want him on the Ravens, but if the Ravens are going to shell out money, especially with their cap situation, because that's the thing here. We talk about all these guys, Derek Wolfe, Matt Judon, Ngakoue, Gus Edwards, all of these guys. It's a tricky puzzle to fit all these guys in. You've got rookies that are going to need a big payday on the horizon. Are you going to pay Mark Andrews? We know Lamar Jackson's getting paid. Where is this money going to come from? You can't pay everyone. I just don't think that he, one, fits into the Ravens from a price standpoint. But even if he did, I don't think the Ravens should shell out money on a guy that you just really don't know if he's going to play a full 16 games. The Ravens need a guaranteed guy. They need a sure thing to come in here and be a legit pass rusher. I think we can all agree on this. Last thing we want to see is him joining his brothers in Pittsburgh. Last thing we want to see for the Ravens is to go up and against TJ Watt and JJ Watt 2 times a year. That's the last thing we need right now. So whether he signs with the Ravens or not, just please don't go to Pittsburgh. Go to the NFC. Go play for the Packers. I know he went to Wisconsin, played college there. Go back there and play. Play in Green Bay. Go to the NFC. All right. I think that'll do it for episode 141. Appreciate you guys listening as always. Keep rocking with us. We'll be here. I'll be here in some capacity every week moving forward. We'll be talking about stuff throughout the offseason. Orioles getting ramped up with spring training. We'll be talking about that. Maybe a little Maryland basketball as they make a push here to try to make it to the NCAA tournament. 142. We'll be here next week. Spread the word. Tell a friend, family member, coworker about the podcast. And we'll be talking to you next week.